Hi, I'm Dr. Jarrod Spencer, sports psychologist with the company Mind of the Athlete, where we're really passionate about improving the emotional health and performance of athletes. Thanks for joining me for the CD on sleep, the number one factor in performance. You're like many athletes out there. You work so hard trying to achieve so much. You put in the time in the gym. You put in the time in practice with personal trainers. You're doing all the extras, all the little things. Your diet is pretty clean. But there's one part about your training that is often overlooked and minimized, and that is your sleep. Athletes today need to do more to focus in on improving their sleep. No matter what you do as an athlete, if your sleep isn't good, you're at a competitive disadvantage. I'm excited for you to be listening to this CD because I'm going to teach you the neuroscience of sleep and equip you with practical skills to improve the quality of your sleep and thus your athletic performance. Did you know that sleep is actually what is undermining your mental health? Think about it. The mental health crisis all across America, and particularly a rise in depression and anxiety, is really being driven by insufficient sleep. The brain needs sleep to recover, and yet clearly we're not getting enough of it. If we want to decrease anxiety, decrease depression, and increase performance, then we're going to have to start with improving our sleep. When I work in my private practice, nothing I say to an athlete is going to help them to improve their athletic performance if their sleep is not good. It's the same with you. So let's look at some of the data, what's out there on sleep. The CDC has actually said insufficient sleep is a public health epidemic. This was written about in Time magazine's article on the power of sleep in 2014. We know that athletes today are only averaging, get this, 6.5 hours of sleep a night. That's nearly not enough to the often recommended 8.5 to 9.2 hours of sleep. So how many hours of sleep are you getting every night? And is it where you should be? Or are you like many and most athletes and only getting about 6.5 hours of sleep? If we can improve your sleep, not only are you going to think better and feel better, you're also going to start to have a competitive advantage. Because if the athletes you're lining up against are only getting 6.5 hours of sleep and you're getting more, you are going to have greater longevity, better muscle regrowth, recovery, and so forth. Many of the great athletes know that sleep is important and they get more of it. Did you know, according to one study, that LeBron James gets about 12 hours of sleep a day? That Roger Federer averages 11 to 12 hours a day as well? Michelle Wie, 10 to 11 hours of sleep a day? Amazing, right? They get it. They understand. Even Lindsey Vonn gets 9 hours of sleep a day. Steve Nash, professional basketball player, 10 hours of sleep a day. So if they know the science of sleep and they value it. A study out of Stanford University had athletes sleep 10 hours per night for 5 to 8 weeks. Sounds like a great study, right? Maybe you'd even want to be part of it. Well, in that study, they actually found that basketball players, they increased their free throw shooting by 9%. That's huge. That's significant. Football players, they had a 1/10 of a second average decrease in the 40-yard dash. Again, a remarkable feat. We know that sleep can dramatically increase your performance, but it can also hurt your performance if you're not getting enough of it. Another study on sleep and injuries showed that athletes who sleep on average less than 8 hours per night have 1.7 times greater risk of being injured than those who sleep greater than 8 hours. If you want to have less injuries, it's important to get more sleep. In the 2014 Time magazine article, The Power of Sleep, it said this quote, "Studies consistently show that people who sleep less than 8 hours don't perform as well on concentration and memory tests, but report feeling no deficits in their thinking skills." I know what you're probably thinking right now. I know I'm not getting enough sleep, but I'm okay. Actually, what they're saying in this Time magazine article is that that's the problem. You think that it's having no impact on you, but it really is. Did you know, when asked, what word describes your generation? the generation of athletes today, 15 to 25-year-olds, what word describes your generation more than any other word? What word do you think that athletes typically report? Did you guess tired? Because that's exactly it. I've asked so many athletes as a speaker that travels the country, what word describes your generation? And they consistently say tired. When I ask athletes to raise their hands, who feels tired right now? A staggering 80 to 90% of the athletes in the room will raise their hand. Do you feel tired? Likely. Not to worry, you're not alone. But what we've got to do is teach you the neuroscience of sleep and give you some of those skills to improve it. So let's look at the neuroscience of sleep now. What is sleep? How would you answer that question? Think about it for a moment. We spend at least, ideally, a third of our lives sleeping. So what's really happening in our brain, in our body during that time? Sure, it's rest, it's recovery, and it's so much more. Did you know that your nervous system is made up of two main divisions, two main systems? One is called the sympathetic nervous system. That's responsible for go, 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 go. That's what wakes you up in the morning. That side of your nervous system is often very well developed in our athletes today. In fact, you're really good at going. From about 6 a.m. to about 12 o'clock at night, your lives are often go, 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 go. But the other side of your nervous system is the one that's a little underdeveloped oftentimes. And that's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for relax, relax, relax. That's that side of your nervous system that helps you fall asleep at night. When you engage in sleep, it's the parasympathetic nervous system that is activated. But too often athletes struggle at night to shut down the sympathetic nervous system and really engage the parasympathetic nervous system to get a good night's sleep. When the parasympathetic nervous system is engaged, what happens is the electrical activity in your brain begins to slow down. We actually measure that electrical activity in your brain as something called a brain wave. When your brain is engaged and alert, it's in what we call a beta brainwave state, high activity, sympathetic nervous system. But as you begin to relax and go into a parasympathetic nervous system mode, what happens is the electrical activity begins to slow down. You enter into an alpha brainwave state. This is more like when you're on the couch watching TV, your shoes are off, and you're just relaxing. Feels pretty good, right? As you begin to drift off a little bit more, activity slows down and reaches what we call a theta brainwave state. A theta brainwave state is like when you're watching a movie at home and you begin to nod off. You wake up after a few minutes and you realize that you had fallen asleep. So you think you know what's going on in the movie, but you kind of don't know what's going on in the movie. So you pretend like you know what's going on in the movie, but you're really not sure. Have you been there? Of course, we all have. That's the theta brainwave state. That's when you're in and you're out of sleep. But when you finally enter into a sleep state, that's what we call a delta brainwave state. And when you enter into a delta brainwave state, there are a few main stages of that. It's important to know that at first when you fall asleep, you'll enter into a REM state, rapid eye movement state of sleep. And that'll continue off and on throughout your sleep cycle. But I want you to imagine this oversimplified model of your sleep cycle. That if you think of a graph, and you think of these lines that would go down below the midline being delta when you officially fall asleep. If you go down, you would go into stage 1, then stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 being the deep sleep. And then you imagine a line coming back up to that delta line, that midline. And so each dip from stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3, 2, 1, that's about an hour and a half. And your sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm, the natural time that you would fall asleep and wake up, and as you go through these stages of stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, that hour and a half is very important. There's a lot going on in there. Allow me to explain. In stage 1 and stage 2, there's a lot of memory consolidation going on. It's your lighter sleep. In stage 3, you have a lot of muscle repair. And in stage 4, you have a lot of muscle regrowth. So if you fall asleep at night, you want to get as much stage 3 and 4 as an athlete as you possibly can. You need the muscle repair, you need the muscle regrowth. So every hour and a half as you come back up, you might notice that you toss and turn at night, that you might look at the clock, or maybe that's when you tend to go to the bathroom. And your circadian rhythm is pretty regulated, pretty set, ideally. And if you actually regulate, you might even notice that you tend to look at the clock around the same time every night, maybe around 4 o'clock in the morning, and say, oh, I got a little bit more time. Then you would go back down into another one of those hour-and-a-half cycles. Ideally, you would go through that process each night of stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 for as long as you possibly can for 8.5 to 9 hours. Maybe even more if you could. But the more sleep you're getting, what you're going to notice is more rest and more recovery. As you go through the night, your brain is literally going through a checklist. A to B to C to D. It's literally saying, hey, we've got to check out our kidneys and how are they functioning, and let's check out our digestive system and repair anything that needs repaired there. So it's important to get longer sleep because your brain and body are doing so much. For example, Leslie Mann in The Vicious Cycle wrote in an article to the Tribune newspaper in 2014 about some chemical reactions that go on during sleep. She said that as you increase your sleep, you're actually increasing HGH, human growth hormone, and you're increasing leptin, which is actually an appetite suppressant. So if you're getting more sleep, you actually might notice that you're not quite as hungry. Increased sleep also increases glial cell function. That's the ability to really clean up the neurons in the brain. But with decreased sleep, what you're going to notice is increased cortisol. That's a stress hormone. That's not so good. And increased ghrelin. That's an appetite stimulant. You ever notice sometimes that as you get less sleep, you get the munchies, you're hungrier? Yeah, it's not so good. You want to make sure that you get more sleep so that you can have the brain releasing proper chemicals and proper amounts for long-term sustainability. So that's a little bit about the neuroscience of sleep. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but keep studying the neuroscience of sleep. The more you learn about it, the more you're going to improve the quality of your sleep. Now it's time to get to some techniques, some practical skills you could actually utilize and apply so that you can improve your sleep. Number 1. The biggest factor in sleep today is actually your cell phone. Do you sleep with your cell phone in your bedroom with you at night? Do you sleep with your cell phone within arm's reach of you at night? Do you lie in bed looking at your cell phone right before you fall asleep? Do you look at your cell phone in the middle of the night, checking a text message or a social media post? Do you look at your cell phone before your feet even hit the floor in the morning before you get out of bed? If you answered yes to most of these questions, not to worry. You're like so many people out there. In fact, this may sound a little dramatic, but I believe that the cell phone has become our generation's form of a cigarette. Yes, a cigarette. You see, years ago, cigarettes were pretty common. Doctors would even sometimes prescribe them to their patients. We didn't know the harmfulness of cigarettes, but we do now. When I think about the cell phone today, there's so many positive aspects to it. But one negative aspect is that the cell phone is significantly changing our sleep. Allow me to explain. You see, the blue light that many electronics emit actually suppresses melatonin. That's the chemical you need to fall asleep at night. So if you're lying in bed looking at your phone, getting a big dose of the blue light, then you're really taking anti-melatonin. So while your brain's trying to get you to fall asleep, you're doing the opposite. It's why you might actually lie in bed sometimes and feel like you're so tired, but you can't fall asleep. It's likely a result of the cell phone. Now, some of you might say, well, I put night shift on my phone, so that should take care of the problem. I just haven't seen the studies yet to fully support that. But what I have seen is that some studies show that the more time you're on social media, the more depressed you actually are. And so if you think about what you're actually doing while you lie in bed looking at your phone, is it's likely some form of social media. And consequently, you're likely getting a good dose of depression before you fall asleep at night. Think about this. Every night before you go to bed, you're getting anti-melatonin, anti-sleep, and depression. How's that working out for you? Not very well, I'm sure. Like many people, this is causing a long-term systemic problem. What do we have to do? Simply put, we've got to rethink your relationship with your cell phone. What do I suggest? I suggest that every night you pay attention to this big yawn that comes over you. There's a yawn that will come over you every night, which is really the brain's release of melatonin. It's a big wave that lets you know that about an hour later after that yawn, you would ideally fall asleep at night. So when that yawn comes over you tonight, that's your indicator of no more electronics. Put away your cell phone, your computer, your iPads, whatever it may be, and allow the brain to release the melatonin that it needs to properly fall asleep. What do you do with your cell phone at that point in time? I suggest that you charge your cell phone on a charging station across the room from your bed. Now, ideally, if you could actually charge your cell phone in another room outside of the bedroom, that would be the best. Because even sometimes in the middle of the night, your cell phone may ding or a light may come on that could be disruptive to your sleep. So charge your cell phone outside of your bedroom, or at the very least across the room from your bed, so that you're not tempted at all to look at your phone while lying in bed, or maybe even in the middle of the night to check your phone. Take a cell phone break every night. I personally stop looking at my cell phone electronics at 9 p.m. each night. And then around 7 o'clock in the morning, I re-engage. That 10-hour break is very important to me for rest and recovery, allowing my brain to really slow down and for me to get the proper amount of rest that I need. I know that may not be realistic for you, but as best you possibly can, find a way to rethink your relationship with your cell phone so that you can allow your brain and body to get the sleep and go through the processes it needs so that you can have better performance. Number 2, the consistency of your sleep matters far more than you could possibly imagine. In Time Magazine's The Power of Sleep article, it said that all of the artificial light and screen time is disrupting our internal clock. Simply put, our bodies don't know when to go to sleep naturally anymore. We just talked a little bit about that in the first suggestion regarding cell phone. So consistency of sleep matters the most. But you're probably like many athletes, and they don't even know when their body would ideally fall asleep. What time do you go to sleep each night? Is it variable? Is it sometimes at 10 o'clock and other times at 11:30 or 1:30? That's likely the case. And again, it's very common. But if you want to have a competitive advantage, if you want to feel better, then let's not do what is so common. Let's do the uncommon. Let's find a way to get your sleep consistent. Remember, in the last example I mentioned, pay attention to your yawn each night. Mark that down and know an hour later, that's when you want to ideally fall asleep. So as soon as the yawn comes over you, dim the lights, take a shower, maybe have a light snack, maybe read a book for pleasure. But everything in that hour is so important to help you get better quality sleep and fall asleep ideally at that exact time. Again, if you blow by that exact time you'd fall asleep, then you're probably going to be up for another hour and a half, which is really going to undermine your rest and recovery and performance. If you throw your sleep off one night because you stayed up a little too late, it actually takes 3 nights of consistent sleep to get you back on track. Ouch. 3 nights? Yes. Throw your sleep off one night and you need 3 nights of consistent sleep to get back on track. Let me prove it to you. Which day of the week do people tend to report feeling the best? What's your answer? Did you say Friday? I hope so. Good guess. Or maybe Thursday. Thursday and Friday are the days that people tend to feel the best in America. Why? The answer is because they got consistent sleep for at least 3 nights. Here's a general theme in America. People will stay up late on a Friday night, sleep in on a Saturday morning, stay up late on a Saturday night, maybe sleep in Sunday, maybe take a long nap on Sunday. Maybe on Sunday night, they have difficulty falling asleep because they've been laying around or staying up late. Their sleep is really thrown off. Monday morning, people feel the worst in America. Do you notice that with yourself? That people tend to feel the worst on Monday morning. They're just so tired. Their sleep is thrown off. In fact, they just want to go home Monday after a practice or after school or after work and just put on their comfortable clothes and relax. Restaurants know this, which is why many restaurants are actually closed on Monday nights. Televisions know this. There are many great TV shows that tend to be on Monday night because people are home and they're not really feeling very energetic. But after going to bed Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night at the same time and waking up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, people tend to feel really good again. In fact, what I suggest to many people is schedule your most important meetings or your best workouts, or if you have a game on a Thursday, even better, because Thursdays when people tend to feel the best. Friday's also really good, But what I tend to say is after about lunchtime on Friday, I jokingly say we should all shut down America because nobody really wants to be in class after lunch on Friday, or many people don't really want to work. I think we can just slow things down. It's true that people feel really good on Friday, but productivity is really best for that morning part and not so great in the afternoon. So if you want to have great performance and your best performance, Thursday tends to be the days that we feel really good. Now, what if you knew that and then actually went to bed at the same time Friday and Saturday and Sunday? And if you got up the same time each of those mornings, now instead of having a sluggish Monday and Tuesday of practice or academics, now you're actually having a competitive advantage because your Monday and Tuesday is far more productive. You're getting the natural rest and recovery that your body needs. And now you're digesting the information your teachers are teaching on Monday. Now your lift and your conditioning on Monday and Tuesday is so much better. So if you want to have better performance through a season, I know, again, this may sound extreme, but I really want you to go to bed every night at the same time and wake up every morning at the same time. If you can do this, you're going to notice that you're feeling better. You're having less injuries through the season. You have greater endurance, more emotional energy deeper into the season, so that when things matter the most, which is the end of the season, you're actually still playing your best. I want that competitive advantage for you. Start getting it more by keeping your sleep as consistent as you possibly can throughout the season. Number 3, I really want you to focus on your pre-sleep routine. You heard me address it briefly in the last technique on consistency. But that hour before you fall asleep is very, very important. And there's a particular technique that you should utilize that you're probably not. And that technique is reading a book. What? A book? Yeah, not a book like a school book or anything like that. I'm talking about a book for pleasure, something that has nothing to do with athletics, nothing to do with academics, takes your mind as far away from the norm of your day. Maybe it's a fictional story. Maybe it's a romance novel. Maybe it's a sci-fi mystery. Whatever it may be, I want you to find a book. Every night before you go to bed, I want you to read that book. I know what you might be thinking. Well, whenever I try to read a book, I fall asleep. Exactly. That's the point. I want you to fall asleep. And so if you have a little trouble falling asleep at night, a book is a great way to slow down your brain, slow down your body, and begin to really enter into that deeper parasympathetic brainwave state and eventually nod off. Dim your lights, take that shower, have a little light snack, maybe put on some soft, relaxing piano music to help push your brain into that alpha and then theta and then delta brainwave state. So the use of music can be very helpful. But ultimately, the technique I'm suggesting in your pre-sleep routine is a book. What I'm also suggesting is not to engage in any video games. Even though your body might be relaxing, your brain is very much engaged. I really don't want you watching the news on television because it's often negative. I also don't want you watching a movie because you get sucked into the plot line and you might blow by your ideal time to fall asleep, getting your second wind and staying up later. I also don't want you watching a game because the same thing happens when you watch sporting events. Instead, if you have to watch some television, which I'm not a fan of, but if you did, watch something very calming and soothing, like a story about a moose walking across the meadow in a national park with a narrator whose voice is very dry, very deep, and very slow. As he talks like this, it'll naturally put you to sleep. Okay, enough of that. You get the point, right? Be very mindful of what you are listening to, watching in that hour before you go to bed at night. And if you don't have a book, I really suggest you get to a library, a bookstore, and find something. I was speaking with one professional athlete this past year, an incredible young man having phenomenal success in his sport. And each time I interacted with him, I would ask him, "What are you reading?" And he always had a new book. He was a ferocious reader and he knows the power of this technique. And as a professional athlete, this technique, he said, has given him longevity, and it's a major part, not just of something he enjoys, but of the science of his high performance. Let's take the page out of his playbook and put it in yours. Get yourself a book to read before you go to bed. Number 4, stay down. Stay down. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you just had some insomnia, toss and turn in the middle of the night, thinking about stressors, can't really fall back asleep? And then you lie there in your bed saying, gosh, if I'm thinking about these things, I might as well just get up and engage with my computer or my phone or just go do something. Again, you're not alone. Many people think this way and even do these things, but the reality is that's counterproductive. You see, when you experience a little insomnia in the middle of the night, don't get up. Stay down. Stay in your bed. Slow down your breathing as best you possibly can. Put some filters on what you're thinking about and keep your mind only focused on specific things. Of course, your mind's going to run to those stressors, but keep your mind as best you can. Focus on the specific thing that you're trying to utilize to help you fall back asleep. For example, you might say, hey, I just want to imagine I'm in my happy place. Maybe it's a Caribbean island, a beach somewhere, or in the woods or at a lake house. Whatever it may be for you, try to keep your mind focused on that topic. Because if you can stay down at the very longest, about an hour and a half, that next sleep wave is going to come over you and you'll fall back to sleep. But if you actually get up and engage your brain in beta brainwave state, sympathetic nervous system, it's more likely that you're going to catch your second wind and then you're not going to fall asleep when that next sleep wave comes over you. Think of it this way. Have you ever been surfing or maybe boogie boarding? When you're out there on your boogie board and you're waiting for that wave to come in, sometimes you may be out there with some friends and they're paying attention more than you. So they catch that wave just at the right time, the right angle, the right way, and they ride that wave all the way into the shore. It's a great ride, right? But maybe you were talking or a little distracted, really not doing what you need to be doing. So you caught that same wave, but not nearly as good as your friend. So instead of going all the way into the shore, you just went a little bit and then you sputtered out there. That's kind of like that second sleep wave that you're waiting for. You need to be in your bed, slowing down your breathing, keeping your brain wave in a parasympathetic state, trying to keep your mind relaxed, more on something positive, not engaging with your phone. And so when that sleep wave comes over you again, you be in the right place with the right mindset so that you can ride that wave all the way back in and fall asleep. If you do this, you're going to feel so much better the next day, and the insomnia is not going to undermine your performance as much. If you don't do this and you actually get up, what you're probably going to notice is that around 2 o'clock the next day, that's when you are going to feel really tired, really fatigued. Why? It's because the lowest energy level during a day is 8 hours after you wake up. So if most people wake up around 6 o'clock in the morning, in America, 8 hours later is 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock is a natural low energy level. In fact, in many parts of the world, they'll say, let's take a siesta at 2 o'clock. Let's shut down business at 2 o'clock. They know the natural circadian rhythm of a person. And so it's good to shut things down then. But if you experience insomnia, when that 2 o'clock wave comes, it's going to hit you really, really hard. And you're going to feel a strong need for sleep. But like many athletes in America, you can't fall asleep at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. You've got practice or a workout afterwards. So you have to power through that and then power through a workout and then get home, have dinner and study and stay up a little bit later. And during that time, when you don't get that break in the mid-afternoon and you're really feeling the effect of some insomnia, you're going to have less productivity or practice with your studying and such. It becomes very, very important as best you can when you feel insomnia, stay down, don't get up, and you'll be glad you were able to apply some of these techniques the next day. When the wave comes over you with a little fatigue, it's not nearly going to be as bad as it would have been had you gotten up in the middle of the night. Stay down. Number 5, clear your mind. When you go to bed at night, your conscious mind is really shutting down, but your preconscious mind, that part of your mind that's like the back burner of the stove where you might cook the chicken on the front burner, but on the back burner, the rice is simmering. That preconscious mind is what's very much going to work. The preconscious mind, by definition, is this: the place in your mind where memories are stored that can easily be recalled, but they're often outside of your immediate awareness. So when you go to bed at night, you become aware of what's really in your preconscious mind. as your conscious mind is no longer preoccupied with what's in front of you. Too often in our society today, athletes like yourself are so busy from one thing to the next that they don't really have time to think or process what's really going on in the preconscious mind. Oftentimes, there's emotionally charged experiences in the preconscious mind that you finally get around to thinking about when you put your head on the pillow. That is sometimes problematic and can be a major contributor to the insomnia that you might be experiencing. So what I'm suggesting is that before you even put your head on the pillow, take some time to clear your mind. What I mean by that is, simply put, talk about your stuff. My stuff? What do you mean, my stuff? It's those emotionally charged things, those frustrations, those experiences that you have, the tensions you have. Who can you talk about your stuff with? And hopefully it's a parent, maybe a close friend, maybe a counselor. But the more in life we can talk about our stuff with somebody to help us process these things, the less likely it's going to be that they get us when we put our head on the pillow and then those things we've been avoiding really come to our mind. Clear your mind before you go to bed. Talk about your stressors as best you can during the day or in the hour before you go to bed. Maybe have a heart-to-heart conversation with your mom, for example. But if you can't do those things, two other ways to clear your mind are simply this. One, prayer. Prayer is a process of communing with a power greater than yourself, however you might define that to be. But that process of prayer or meditation, that is an experience of helping to clear your mind. Another suggestion is to write things down. Take some time to have a notebook and a pen and really put your thoughts to those pages. Brain dumping is what we typically call it. The more you can just take your thoughts and feelings and unload them in what we call a cathartic experience. Catharsis means a freeing of emotion and get it out. It's very helpful to clear your mind. If you want to fall asleep a little bit better, clear your mind. Talk, pray, write about your stuff to clear out that preconscious mind. Number 6, write it down. Have you ever had an experience where you had some insomnia and then the next morning you woke up and you could barely remember what you were thinking about through the night? You may have even had this with a dream. You may have said to somebody, "Oh, I had this crazy dream last night." You were aware that you had the dream, but then in the morning, you really couldn't recall any of the details. Why is that? Well, it's a bit of a protective mechanism of the mind, but we can't easily recall the things that we dreamt about or thought about during our insomnia. So if the things you're thinking about in the middle of the night from insomnia are so troublesome emotionally for you, what I suggest is keeping a notepad and pen or pencil in your nightstand. And I want you to take out your pen or pencil and I want you to write on your notepad the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things that are really troubling you. Now, I know it's going to be hard to write in the dark, and I know it's certainly really hard to read that writing in the morning. Trust me, I know I've done this many times, and it's hard to read that chicken scratch. But by writing it down, it's amazing how the next day, when you wake up and you say to yourself, "Man, I'm so frustrated that I had that insomnia," you'll actually be able to identify, okay, these are the things that were bothering me more than I initially thought. So I'm going to take my time and energy today, and I'm going to try to resolve these conflicts, these challenges that are going on in my life as best I possibly can so that they don't interrupt my sleep tomorrow. If you have a pen or paper handy, put it in your nightstand and make this a routine that you write down the stuff that's bothering you during insomnia in the middle of the night. And then make it your mission to go after and try to address those concerns as best you possibly can so that the next night they don't trouble you again. And our 7th technique is my favorite. It's napping. Do you enjoy a good nap? Have you ever taken a really long nap and actually woken up and felt worse? Yeah, we all have. So how do we properly take a nap so that we can perform better? Interestingly, NASA did a study on some pilots some time ago, and they basically put their pilots, these are the creme de la creme of pilots in America oftentimes, and they put them through a study. They put them through their normal training process And then at 6 p.m. in the evening, they had flight simulator testing. But they had a control group do that. And they had this other group, which every day at 2 o'clock, they took a 26-minute nap. Then they took the same flight simulator test. What they found was that the group that consistently took a 26-minute nap at 2 o'clock each day, they actually outperformed their peers, get this, by 32% on the same flight simulator test. Pretty impressive, right? I mean, if you put that in the context of athletics, if all the athletes on a high school basketball team were competing at 7 p.m. for a game, but one team was consistently getting a nap around 2 o'clock each day, would they perform better? Well, maybe not 32%, but certainly you can begin to see how this could be a competitive advantage, right? So the two questions are, one, why 26 minutes? And two, why 2 o'clock? Well, the why 2 o'clock we addressed in the previous suggestion on techniques. But again, the simple message is that's your lowest energy level during the day. And if you could actually just close your eyes and nod off, shutting down your sympathetic nervous system for just a few minutes, that would actually help you in the long run. 2 o'clock is your lowest energy level during the day. Or more specifically, 8 hours after you wake up is typically your lowest energy level during the day. Why 26 minutes? Because 26 minutes is just enough time for your brain to move from delta 1 down to delta 2. But not enough time for you to move into deep delta 2 or even into delta 3. You see, when that occurs, the parasympathetic nervous system is really engaged in delta 3 and delta 4, and it releases some pretty heavy chemicals from the parasympathetic nervous system that are actually going to make you feel groggy, which is why if you've actually taken a nap about 45 minutes, that's actually the bottom of your circadian rhythm cycle, and you actually would wake up feeling worse. It's like so hard to get going. And you may say to yourself, gosh, I don't know why I feel so bad right now. If you actually take that 45 minutes or an hour-long nap, you might actually notice that your performance that evening is not nearly what it could have been. So actually that nap of that length is counterproductive to performance. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Well, what if I just went a full hour and a half? Well, you're right. If you're going to take a long nap, you want it to be about an hour and a half because that would take you to the top of that sleep cycle. And then what you would notice is that you naturally went from brainwave state of delta 4, 3, 2, 1 into some theta and then alpha, beta, and awake. But 26 minutes has proven to be better. Why? If you actually did that hour and a half, what you may notice is that later on that evening, when it's time to fall asleep at night, you're not quite as tired at that ideal time because you did that whole first part of your sleep cycle in that afternoon part. Let's take a page out of NASA's playbook. Let's have you begin to nap each day, if possible, midday for 26 minutes. Now, if you can't do this, what can you do at the very least? One high school football team I worked with had film study before their after-school practice. As soon as they would dim the lights, coach noticed that many of their athletes would fall asleep and their film study wasn't so good. After talking to him about this technique, what he suggested was this. He would dim the lights and have the athletes put their head down, intentionally just close their eyes for 10 to 15 minutes. Then he would turn the lights back on and just do film study for about 15 more minutes. Coach said that their productivity in that 15 minutes after closing their eyes was so much better than trying to have them go through a whole 30-minute film study in the dark. Go with your body's natural instinct and just try to close your eyes, even for 5 minutes each day, midday, shutting down your sympathetic nervous system, giving your parasympathetic nervous system just an activation there for a little bit. And what you'll notice is that for the second half of your day, your productivity is a little bit better, your energy is up higher, your mood is more positive, and your performance will be better too. Sleep is the number one factor in performance. And if you're like many athletes, you want more of it. I know you probably feel tired. Most people do. And I'm hopeful that the CD on sleep, the number one factor in performance, may have given you some insights and some practical ideas to improve your sleep and ultimately your athletic and academic performance and overall mental health. Remember, keep your sleep consistent. Take 26-minute naps halfway through the day. Keep a notepad and pen by your nightstand to write down things that are troubling you in the middle of the night. If you do have insomnia, stay down. Don't get up. Try to clear your mind by talking, writing, and praying as best you can to clear out those emotionally charged things in your preconscious mind. Keep your sleep consistent. After 3 nights of consistent sleep, you'll generally feel better. And be mindful of your cell phone. It's very important to think about your relationship with your cell phone, particularly in the hour before you go to bed at night, so that your brain can release the melatonin that it needs to properly put you into that sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm, so that you would get better quality sleep. You'd fall asleep faster. And hopefully that you would get the 8.5 to 9.2 hours of sleep that's recommended. You do these things, and I'm really optimistic that you're going to notice that your mood is better, you've got less anxiety, less depression, your memory recall is better, and overall, you would have a clearer mind and better performance. Thanks so much for allowing me to share this content with you. I wish you the best in athletics, academics, and beyond. If you like this information and want more of it, be sure to check out mindoftheathlete.com, our website, or all of our social media links as well: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. If you want a book to read, I might suggest the Mind of the Athlete, Clearer Mind, Better Performance book that I wrote, which is full of even more content on sleep, the #1 factor in performance. Get on the path of learning about the mind. There are so many wonderful teachers, mentors, books, CDs, and content out there. Keep learning, keep growing, keep developing the 6 inches between your ears. You'll be glad you did. Wishing you the best on the journey. Take care. Copyright 2018, Mind of the Athlete, all rights reserved.